So hey guys, today we're going to show off some ideas or strategies that you might be able to use to beat the living crap out of any Tenpai player. So, well, they're not necessarily the best ideas per se, but they are ideas for sure, is how I feel about them. So, with the Nemesis cards, we have Nemesis Protoss, Nemesis Eshkatos. So Eshkatos is a dragon, so we can just simply declare dragon if we're able to summon Eshkatos somehow. And one thing we have going for us is that we have Nemesis Flag here, which is a pyro, which is searchable off of Flame Banshee. So if we're able to make a rank 4 and we have a banish card, we can then go into Nemesis Flag, and then we can grab specifically Protoss to declare fire, or we can grab Eshkatos and then declare dragon, because itself is a dragon indeed. And then Protoss can declare fire because flag is a fire. So that's one idea to shut down Tenpai. And of course, because they have to essentially make us go first, we essentially do, well, whatever we want. Another idea that I've seen that's been flown around is we can thrust. Because they run a lot of pan traps, we can always thrust, and then we can thrust for Dimensional Barrier. And then Dimensional Barrier declares Synchro. And the only counterplay to this is specifically if you have Red Reboot. Aside from that, there is no counterplay, and you will probably just be screwed. So, you know, well, let's see Tenpai OTK without being able to access the extra deck. And speaking of accessing the extra deck, we can't forget about Artifact Scythe. This is another way to really stop our opponent from accessing their extra deck, you know? So that's one way. And then, of course, we have Alba Loss. Alba Loss prevents any extra deck monsters and Ritual Monster from being able to activate their effects on the field. But if this leaves because of an opponent's card effect, which I mean, if it comes up, it comes up, I guess, right? We can banish all face-down cards in the extra decks face up until your opponent's end phase, so that's kind of cute, I guess. Also worth mentioning, I guess, in the same, like, kind of way that this works, we also have Banquet. So, you know, Banquet of Millions. Banish however many cards from your extra deck. Your opponent probably doesn't have much to do after this point. After getting banqueted, you're probably free to do whatever. So these are a bit gimmicky, but you know, if your opponent did make you go first, I mean, it was their choice to get hit by this, honestly. So yeah, those are just a few ideas. And of course, board breakers are all spells and traps. Well, not spells and traps, I guess. Impermanent can kind of be a board breaker sometimes, but a Secret Village, Spell Canceller. We have both these options, and this prevents Forbidden Droplet, Raigeki, Lightning Storm, Harpy's Feather Duster. None of those cards are activatable under Secret Village of the Spellcasters. So if we village our opponent, specifically if they're playing Tenpai, they're probably pretty screwed, especially when we pair an end board with this. So that's probably a GG angle. And then on top of this, we still have yet more options. So you've heard of bad ideas, but if we're really going for the jank, why don't we just remove main phase 1? So here's a goofy way to do that. So we have, let's see if I can find it. Was this not the name of the card? Well, okay. We have the Grand Horn of Heaven. During your opponent's main phase, when they would special summon a monster to negate the card, and if you do destroy that monster, then your opponent draws one card, then ends the main phase. So, just the general idea of why don't we just end our opponent's main phase 1? Then the only thing they would be able to do is, well, if we're playing specifically Tenpai, right? The only card you're actually able to activate that will do anything is not Senging Summoning, because this is essentially spell speed 1, right? We have to activate this during main phase 1, which no longer exists, so this card does nothing, this does nothing, this does nothing, this does nothing, and this does nothing, so these are all dead cards. So the only card you have that actually does anything will be specifically Sangen Kaiman. So if you activate Sangen Kaiman, then you'll be able to special summon potentially 1 or 2 Tenpai cards depending on what you have. So let's say we have Pydra in our hand, we can go ahead and Kaiman to add Genroku, special summon Pydra, special summoning both the Genroku and Pydra. So we added Genroku, so we can special summon it with that effect. So if we just have a negate for Sangen Kaiman, we're solid, right? And our opponent doesn't really have much in the form of plays without the battle phase, because most of the removal will be done by battle. And speaking of battle, some cards are just hard to be outed. So like literally a Marshmelon would be somewhat hard to out, but why would we use a Marshmelon? Marshmelon is a main deck monster, it's not searchable, it's just, yeah, that's not really going to happen, is it? So instead we can just use Chaos Angel instead, which makes our whole board not destructible by battle, and that prevents a lot of removal from being usable on us. Ideally, of course, we will have a Chaos Angel made with light and dark monsters, being unable to be affected or removable by any monster effects, and also none of your monsters will be removable by battle, and there's no damage piercing in Tenpai, so a Chaos Angel in defense with your whole end board in defense is a pretty viable option. Yeah. So that's something we can do. And also worth mentioning, I suppose, is going back to this, if we have Amorphage, let's see, Amorphage. I guess it's not spelled like that. Back to the idea of skipping the main phase 1. Special summon, Armor Factor Pain. And also, I guess, worth mentioning is if we did special summon Armor Factor Pain, this also prevents synchro effects from actually working anyway, so good luck outing Armor Factor Pain, the Imagination Trick Overlord, in Tenpai. Really big good luck moment on this one. Even if you droplet this, you still need specifically the quick play spell to be able to play at all. Aside from that, you only have main phase 2 to try to do something, I guess. Which is what I would call not the best. And I think there was something else really dumb, kind of similar to this, but there are a bunch of like dumb ideas involving things kind of like this, I suppose. But yeah, if we simply summon Armor Factor Pain, there is no main phase 1, and we don't have to skip like main phase 2 or anything like that. Just main phase 1 is enough. So this is a bit goofy, but yeah, I can get the job done for sure. And of course, I think that this idea is also worth mentioning. If we were being really goofy, we could also be looking at this, I think, right? Real quick, let's see. Sent to your graveyard by opponent's card effect. Nah, this can't be destroyed by... Well, if it's destroyed by battle, it doesn't do anything, so I guess that's not that worthwhile to be looking at. Well, alright then. But, I mean, a funny idea, I guess, would be to do Nekomane King your Tenpai opponent. Well, the world is your oyster because you are going first. The only thing you have to be a little bit wary of is the fact that your opponent is probably running a good amount of hand traps. In terms of board breakers, you probably don't have to worry about them when you're just dropping a Lingering Floodgate. So if we drop a Scythe, that's a lingering extra deck lock. If we Protos Eschatos, those are lingering summon blocks, which prevent our opponent from playing at all. So if we want to be mean to specifically Tenpai, these are some ways to do it. But here's one I find extremely, well, here's one more that I find pretty funny. Yeah, what if we Ojamo our opponent here? Give our opponent 5 tokens, and then, I don't know, we could set like Ash Blossom to a Spring in defense or something, and then It's unoutable. All of the tokens we gave them and the Ash Blossom Joy Spring is also unoutable. So that is a strategy that could just win you the game for no real reason, I guess. But in general, Tenpai, every single one of the Link monsters they play, which it's not that many, those guys can only link off effect monsters. And with Forbidden Droplet, you can't send tokens because it has to send for cost, and costs have to be paid exactly, which is why, for example, you cannot send Pendulum cards on the field to the graveyard with Forbidden Droplet for cost, because they can't be sent to the graveyard. They would instead be sent to the extra deck face up. With tokens, they would just, I guess, cease to exist. So Forbidden Droplet doesn't say cease to exist 5 tokens to negate an equal amount of cards your opponent controls or whatever. So Forbidden Droplet doesn't quite work with this, and a lot of Tenpai players I've seen that they're running less copies of like Raigeki, but they are still running Raigeki and not Dark Hole for some reason, and this is a genuine question, like why don't we run Dark Hole instead of Raigeki? Because this covers a lot of degenerate options, like Ito can be dealt with by Dark Hole, just for example, or like that type of thing. You can Dark Hole it, but you wouldn't be able to like Forbidden Droplet some guys. I guess you could Forbidden Droplet some guys as well, but there is no real benefit if you are always going second to playing Raigeki over Dark Hole, I don't think, right? The only downside is if your opponent is maybe like playing Dinosaur and they gave you a Lost World token, so you're giving them like a baby pop. So that's I guess maybe the one downside, but aside from that, like Dark Hole is lower rarity and able to help you out in my opinion, more situations than Raigeki will, so why bother with this? And I guess if we want to be really funny with it, there's also the idea of, I guess, the fact that continuous effects still affect the Tenpai monsters, so I don't know. We could do a very basic like floodgate, like a skill drain or something like that. Power Sink Stone, whatever. That's not that interesting though. So what if we do a little bit more interesting of a floodgate? So dare I say it, Ghost Rick can beat Tenpai. Ghost Rick Neko Musume. When a level 4 or higher monster's normal or special summon, change that monster to face down defense position. So there are no like level 6 synchros in Tenpai. So if we just flip a level 4 or higher, like every level 4 or higher monster, and we just change those guys to phase out defense position, that actually gets the job done. And I guess that this also works, you know. Might as well throw this in here. Scareclaw, Tryhard. All face-up monsters on the field are changed to defense position. Can't attack. And I mean, well, might as well throw in El Clasico in here. Baguska, pass. Same idea. But also they can't activate their effects at all against Baguska. So yeah, all these options are yours for the taking. So feel free to try a few of these if it might be compatible with your deck. I mean, I know not all of these are compatible with like every deck, but yeah. I guess funny thing you could do is like you could just genuinely just play artifacts. Like I feel like artifacts might be able to unironically beat Tenpai if they're not ready for it. Just blindly throwing some back row removal against artifact. That might not be super great for our opponent here. So artifact Scythe specifically, for example, is not hard once per turn. So here's a funny idea. What if we have a Sanctum set, activate Sanctum, special summon artifact Scythe, our opponent droplets the Scythe. Scythe is not hard once per turn. We still have a Scythe in the back row. If our opponent Lightning Storms us, Dusters us, or whatever, Heavy Storm, we summon artifact Scythe. Again, Forbidden Droplet is hard once per turn. Scythe is not. Double Scythe block, but really scuffed. Speaking of which, Degda plus Verte still an option. And notably, you know, we can DP non-targeting pop, which is very effective against just Tenpai in general if they don't have the field spell, right? Because non-targeted removal is going to be really effective against Tenpai. Even better if it's like an actual board wipe and you're able to remove the field spell pretty reliably. So yeah, just one example of a deck that can do this. We'll just throw this out there. So we have Blackwing. So let's assume our end board is very simply this. We have a Sharnga in the graveyard, and then maybe 1 or 2 copies of Blackwinged Assault Dragon, and then whatever else. It doesn't really matter what those things are, but Blackwing Full Armor Master, since this is on the field, we can quick effect use Sharnga's effect to pop. If our opponent activates 4 or more monster effects, we can then use this effect here. During your opponent's turn, you can tribute this card with 4 or more Black Feather counters on it, destroy all cards on the field. And yo, did I mention the fact that this actually isn't hard once per turn? So during your opponent's turn, we can do this twice, and this destroys all cards on the field except if we have specifically at least 1 copy of Black Feather Whirlwind, which you will usually search in a most Blackwing combos. You will have access to Black Feather Whirlwind. So the first time we activate the Blackwinged Assault Dragon, it will your whole board, specifically if you have dark monsters here, right? Usually your inboard should be all dark monsters anyways. Black Feather Whirlwind will protect all of those monsters by removing 1 feather counter from your field instead. So in this case, I'll remove from the Blackwinged Assault Dragon. And then we should be able to, if our opponent activates like 1 more monster effect, which they probably will have to be able to play the game, Blackwinged Assault Dragon, Zeus the entire field, part 2, and then you still have Blackwing Full Armor Master, and maybe some follow-up play, or maybe you don't. It kind of depends, but yeah, that seems pretty effective to me. If 1 board wipe doesn't do it, how about 2? So yeah, I guess you could technically also do this with like a Prank Kids, so that could work, but I believe Prank Kids isn't that good without like 3 crossout now in comparison to before. You're not as hand trap resistant, considering you could just use your small engine and then you just put in cards to make your engine really hard to stop. Like crossout called by at 5 copies is pretty brutal. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.